Hey everybody, in this video we're going to be talking about Stephen King's 1996 serial novel, The Green Mile. We'll talk about multiple different editions of this book, talk about the interesting publication history of the book, as well as give some thoughts on the work itself. So before I get started, I want to share a bit of a disclaimer. The Green Mile is kind of a tricky one. There have been multiple different iterations of the novel published, and many people would consider every new iteration, the first printing of every new iteration, to be collectible. So I personally have 4 different iterations out of what I believe would be a possible 6. I'll talk more about that later. And not all of my editions are first editions, so we'll talk about that as well. And apologies in advance. But basically, the original release of The Green Mile was in a series of mass-market paperbacks. And there was one in the US, one in the UK. And then the next iteration of The Green Mile was in an omnibus trade paperback. There was one in the US, one in the UK. And then finally, the last editions to be released were the first trade hardcover editions, one in the US and one in the UK. I don't have all of those, and it's kind of a tricky thing. In most of these videos, I can say, here's the first US and here's the first UK. But like I said, The Green Mile is a little more complex. So thus ends the disclaimer. Let's dive in and look at some books. The first US edition of The Green Mile is a series published between March and August of 1996 of mass-market paperback originals. The entire novel was published in 6 parts, 1 part each month between March and August. And starting at the beginning, The Two Dead Girls, look for Stephen King's name in silver. Price is listed on the spine, $2.99. Following is The Mouse on the Mile, Part 2, with a price of $2.99. Next part is Coffee's Hands, with a price of $2.99. The Bad Death of Edward Delacroix, $2.99. Part 5 is Night Journey, $2.99. And the final part, it's just a little bit bigger than the previous ones, Coffee on the Mile, and it comes in at a kingly $3.99. Nice thing about these books is that they each contain a number line, so inside each one the copyright page looks very similar, and you want to look for a number line that includes the number 1. These books were, the mass-market paperbacks were the way to get the story for several months before the omnibus edition was released. So there were multiple printings of these, but what you want to look for are number lines that include the number 1. That indicates your first printing. So I did a bit of research, I did a bit of looking. So this is the US edition. Down in the corner and on the spine, you can see the very familiar signet imprint. And on the UK editions, so far as I can tell, I may be wrong, they are identical, with the exception that rather than the signet logo, you see the penguin logo. They were released by Signet in the US, Penguin in the UK. I believe that is true. If it's not true, please comment and I'll take the video down and do it all over again. So that was 1996, March through August. And then in 1997, the first omnibus edition was released, and it was released in the US by Plume as a trade paperback that came in a slipcase. Interestingly enough, adds just a real element of class to the edition. not this copy, but this edition was the first edition of the Green Mile that I ever read. A little bit of personal trivia there, but pop it out of the slipcase. Here's the cover. And inside on the copyright page, it says first plume printing May 1997, and you want to look for a number line that includes the number 1. So like I said, there were complimentary editions released in the UK, and around the same time there was an omnibus mass market, or an omnibus trade paperback of the Green Mile released in the UK by Orion. So mass market paperback came first, then trade, then years later hardcover. So in the US in 2000, I want to say, yep, 2000, Scribner released the first ever hardcover omnibus edition of the Green Mile, and it comes in a jacket that looks like this. This is not a first edition, I am sorry to say. I did want to have the hardcover as a placeholder. I'm always on the lookout for a first of the Green Mile omnibus hardcover. This is not it, but this is what it looks like. Inside the jacket of the first would of course be a price. And on the copyright page, this actually does have a number line that includes the number 1, language first Scribner edition 2000, which is what the copyright page on the first hardcover would look like. But like I said, this ain't it. First hardcover, this is just some kind of El Cheapo book club edition. The first hardcover actually has nice white and tan boards and spine, and it looks really cool. But anyway, this is just a placeholder. Forgive me for even including this in the video, but for completion's sake, I did want to show it since I have it. And also in 2000, finally, the complimentary hardcover first omnibus edition was released in the UK by Orion, same company that released the trade paperback in 97. This one, like the US edition, was published in 2000. So for a few years, all that was out there were paperback editions of the Green Mile, which I think is really interesting. But anyway, the UK first omnibus is the back cover. Inside the jacket, look for a price of £16.99 right there. And on the copyright page, this hardback edition published 2000. Yep. It says here, this edition first published in Great Britain in 1998 by Orion. So the trade paperback in the US, 1997, in the UK, apparently 1998, if I'm reading that correctly. Underneath, very nice complementary color to the jacket. These lovely blue boards. Just a really nice looking book. So that is the UK first hardcover edition. So there you go. Any questions? I've got four of these things out of the possible 6 that I've researched. I did at one point pick up the mass market paperback set in a box. It says free Windows screensaver inside. So how exciting is that? If I even had a computer that would use whatever disk that must have come in, but mine is just a case. There was no screensaver. And the set that was in the box was not a matching first set. It was all over the map, but eventually I did find a matching first printing set of the Green Mile paperbacks. So I sold the set that I had, and I took my matching first set and I put it in the box. So anyway, just probably not important at all to most people, but it was a pretty cool thing to me. I was very happy to be able to do that. But anyway, yeah, so there's all the myriad editions, information. I will try to show pictures of the ones that I don't actually have. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of different editions of the Green Mile. So I vividly remember when the Green Mile was released. In 1996, I would have been 12, and then by the time the last book was released, I was 13. And I vividly remember, and I remember my mom and my grandma sort of laughing cynically that the book was sort of a cash grab, because rather than release the whole thing in one go, you know, for the usual price of a paperback in those days, $5-6, the entire set, if you bought each one individually, came to a total of just under $19. So it is an extremely expensive proposition for a paperback, and it could be seen as a cynical cash grab, but I understand that Stephen King was having a hard time, with the novel, and an agent friend, somebody in his life, suggested that he release it in a serial format similar to what Charles Dickens used to do with his fiction. He would release new segments and updates every month in magazines, in newspapers. Stephen King really liked the idea, and he says, I don't know if I believe it, but he says that he was writing the book basically in real time, and it wasn't completed when he started. So he had a very real deadline to meet, and while I think that type of pressure, that type of deadline would probably crush my creativity, the Green Mile actually ends up being, to me, a Stephen King masterpiece and one of his greatest works, written apparently under pressure in real time, with a new segment being released every 6 months, or every month for 6 months in 1996, which is really fascinating. It could have, for an experiment, and one that was written in such a unique way and released in such a unique way, I think that it really does hold up. And like I said, it's one of his all-time classics. But anyway, 1997 comes along, and the all-in-one edition becomes available. And this one, so I don't actually know, I guess, what I have, because this has no listed price. There might have been a sticker or something on the wrap outside of the box that had the barcode and the price, but anyway, this would have been much cheaper than $19, I can guarantee you that. So there was a more efficient and more thrifty way to get the Green Mile in your life just 6 months or so after the final installment of the mass market paperback series was released. And of course now it's the omnibus edition is the way that you can find the Green Mile. It remains in print like most of Stephen King's works, and you can find it at any bookstore any old day of the week, but nothing can match that uniqueness and excitement in 1996 when the pieces of the novel were originally being released, and how interesting and how fun that was. That's one thing that I've always appreciated about Stephen King, is that he's willing to take chances and do new things. Like when the Kindle was released, he released the first standalone short story on the Kindle format. He's done various things like that, and I I think that that's great. I think it's fascinating. But anyway, this video, I've been kind of dreading it for a while because there's so much random stuff to cover, and I feel kind of ill-equipped to talk about most of it because I don't have most of it, and I feel a little bit uncertain. I can't say definitively I know exactly how and when this book was published and released in the US and the UK, but regardless, it's a lot of fun, and I thank you for your time. And if you have updated information, if I've totally put my foot in my mouth and come across like an ass, please let me know in the comments, and I will revise and repost and reply at the very least to what you have to say. But thank you very much for your time, and I will talk to you later. Bye.